The crack of a pistol shot echoed through the dusty main street of San Elizario, Texas, sending Josephine Lawson's heart plummeting as she raced toward the gathering crowd, her skirts clutched in trembling hands. The early morning sun of June 1875 cast long shadows across the dirt road as townsfolk converged around two fallen figures, one of whom she instantly recognized as her father. "Papa," she cried, pushing through the wall of onlookers. She fell to her knees beside Henry Lawson, the town's respected banker, his white shirt blossoming with crimson. His eyes, already growing distant, found hers one last time. "Josephine," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Don't believe what they—" His words faded as his final breath escaped him. Tears blurred her vision as she clutched her father's hand. Through the haze of her grief, she heard the sheriff's booming voice. "Arrest that man. Damian O'Malley, you're wanted for the murder of Henry Lawson." Josephine looked up, her gaze locking with intense blue eyes beneath the brim of a dust-covered hat. The tall cowboy stood motionless, his hands slowly rising in surrender as deputies surrounded him. Blood dripped from a gash on his cheek, his revolver lying in the dirt several feet away. "I didn't kill him," Damian stated, his voice steady despite the guns aimed at him. "This isn't what it looks like." As they dragged him away, those piercing blue eyes found Josephine's again. Something in his unwavering gaze made her breath catch not just grief and shock, but a flicker of doubt. "Miss Lawson, you shouldn't have to see this," Sheriff Wilson said, helping her to her feet. "We've got the murderer. Justice will be served." The townspeople murmured around her. Through her tears, she heard fragments of their whispers, that O'Malley was always trouble. Argument about money. Caught red-handed. But her father's final, interrupted words haunted her. Don't believe what they. As they carried her father's body away, Josephine made a decision that would change everything. While the town cried for immediate justice, she would stay for the truth even if it came from the lips of the man accused of making her an orphan. 2 days later, Josephine stood in the sheriff's office, her black mourning dress stark against the whitewashed walls. "I want to speak with the prisoner." Sheriff Wilson frowned, adjusting his graying mustache. "Miss Lawson, that's hardly appropriate. The trial's set for next week, though it's just a formality. Everyone saw what happened." "Not everyone saw everything," she replied firmly. At 22, Josephine had learned to speak with the same quiet authority her father had used in his banking office. "I have questions only he can answer." "Miss Josephine," the sheriff sighed, using the familiar address he'd known her by since childhood. "I understand you're grieving, but that man is dangerous. He shot your father in cold blood over a loan dispute. What more is there to know?" My father's final words suggested otherwise. She stood straighter. "As his only living relative, I have the right to understand why my father died." After further argument, the sheriff reluctantly led her to the jail cell at the back of the building. Damian O'Malley sat on a narrow cot, his tall frame making the space seem even smaller. He stood as they approached, his face showing surprise at his visitor. 10 minutes, the sheriff grunted, unlocking the cell door to let Josephine in. "I'll be right outside." When they were alone, Josephine studied the man before her. He was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps 28, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and those unsettlingly direct blue eyes. His handsome face was marred by the now stitched gash on his cheek. "Miss Lawson," he said quietly, "I'm sorry about your father. Did you kill him?" She asked bluntly. "No." His answer came without hesitation. "I know what it looked like, but I didn't shoot him." "Then who did?" Damian ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know for certain. I came to town to meet your father about some business. When I found him on the street, he was already wounded. I tried to help him, but someone shot at me too." He touched the cut on his face. "The bullet grazed me before I could draw my gun." "What business did you have with my father?" Josephine pressed. A shadow passed over Damian's face. "Your father contacted me 3 weeks ago. He discovered something in the bank's records, something that worried him. He asked me to investigate quietly." "Why you? You're not from San Elizario." I worked as a Pinkerton detective back east before coming to Texas. Your father knew that." He hesitated. "Miss Lawson, your father believed someone was embezzling from the bank, someone powerful in this town." Josephine's mind reeled. Her father had mentioned nothing of this to her. "Who?" "He didn't tell me. He wanted proof first." Damian stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Miss Lawson, whoever killed your father thought I was working with him. They're afraid of what I might know." "You're saying someone in town murdered my father over money? That's hard to believe. So is the story that a stranger rode into town to kill a banker over a loan he never applied for." His eyes held her steadily. "Your father's last words to you, what were they?" She swallowed hard. "He said don't believe what they, and then he couldn't finish." Damian nodded slowly. "He was trying to warn you." The cell door opened as Sheriff Wilson returned. "Time's up, Miss Lawson." Josephine turned to leave but paused. "Why should I believe you?" "You shouldn't," Damian answered. "Not yet. But if you want justice for your father, investigate for yourself. The truth is in his office somewhere." As she left the jailhouse, Josephine's mind whirled with doubts. The cowboy's story seemed far-fetched, yet something about his unwavering gaze made her hesitate to dismiss it. That evening, after the visitors offering condolences had finally departed, Josephine sat alone in her father's study. The house felt cavernous without his presence. Tomorrow would be the funeral, and soon after, the trial of Damian O'Malley. Time was short if she wanted to discover the truth. She pulled open her father's desk drawer, searching for anything unusual. Bank ledgers, correspondence, personal notes, nothing seemed out of place. Then, tucked beneath a leather-bound journal, she found a small key she didn't recognize. After trying it in every lock in the study without success, Josephine remembered the safe behind the painting in her father's bedroom. The small key fit perfectly into a compartment inside the already opened safe, revealing a hidden drawer containing a single envelope. Inside was a list of names and figures, along with several bank transfer records. Most notably, there were large withdrawals authorized by Jacob Thornton, the mayor of San Elizario and her father's closest friend. Josephine's hands trembled. Mayor Thornton had been like an uncle to her, especially after her mother's death 10 years earlier. He had sat at their dinner table countless times, had helped her father run the bank, had even offered to walk her down the aisle someday when she married. Could he be involved in her father's death? A soft knock at the front door startled her. She quickly hid the documents and went to answer it, surprised to find Clara Wilson, the sheriff's daughter and her childhood friend. "Joe, I'm so sorry to disturb you, but I overheard something tonight." Clara's usual cheerful demeanor was replaced with worry. "My father was talking with Mayor Thornton. They're moving up O'Malley's trial to tomorrow afternoon, right after your father's funeral." "That's too soon," Josephine protested. "Why the rush?" Clara lowered her voice. "Father said something about making sure loose ends are tied up before anyone starts asking questions. Joe, I don't know what's happening, but it doesn't feel right." After Clara left, Josephine returned to the documents, studying them with growing alarm. The evidence suggested Mayor Thornton had been systematically stealing from the bank for years, with the amounts increasing recently. If her father had discovered this theft. She was interrupted by the sound of breaking glass from the study. Heart pounding, Josephine grabbed her father's old revolver from the desk drawer and cautiously approached the room. A dark figure was rifling through the desk. "Stop right there," she commanded, raising the gun with shaking hands. The intruder turned and Josephine gasped as moonlight revealed Deputy Frank Miller's face. "Miss Lawson," he said, raising his hands slightly, "this isn't what it looks like." "It looks like you're breaking into my home the night before my father's funeral," she replied coldly. "On whose orders?" "Mayor Thornton's." A flicker of surprise crossed the deputy's face. "I don't know what you're talking about. The sheriff sent me to check on you." "By climbing through the window, I don't think so." She gestured with the gun. "What were you looking for?" "Nothing that concerns you, Miss Lawson." "Just put down the gun. I want you to leave, now." Her voice trembled, but her grip remained firm. The deputy's expression hardened. "You're making a mistake. Whatever O'Malley told you, he's lying. He killed your father, and you'd be wise to accept that." "I never mentioned Mr. O'Malley." Josephine took a step back. "Get out of my house, Deputy Miller, or I'll scream loud enough to wake the entire town." After a tense moment, he moved toward the broken window. "You should be careful, Miss Lawson. Grief can make people see things that aren't there." Once he was gone, Josephine quickly packed the documents into a small bag, along with some clothing and her father's revolver. She couldn't stay in the house tonight, not when the people she'd trusted all her life might be involved in her father's murder. With few options available, she made her way to the jail through the quiet back streets of San Elizario. The night deputy was young Billy Taylor, who had always harbored a boyish admiration for her. "Miss Lawson, what are you doing here so late?" he asked, jumping to his feet. "I need to speak with the prisoner again, Billy. It's urgent." "I'm not supposed to, please," she implored. 5 minutes, no one needs to know." Red-faced, Billy eventually nodded. 5 minutes, but if Sheriff Wilson finds out, he won't," she promised. Damian was awake, sitting on the edge of his cot. He rose when he saw her. "Miss Lawson." "Someone broke into my house tonight," she said without preamble. "Deputy Miller, he was searching for something." Damian's expression darkened. "Are you all right?" "Yes, but I don't feel safe there anymore." She hesitated. "I found documents in my father's study, evidence that Mayor Thornton has been stealing from the bank." "That's why your father contacted me," Damian confirmed. "He needed someone outside the town's influence to help investigate." "They've moved your trial to tomorrow, right after the funeral," she told him. "They're not giving you a chance." Damian nodded grimly, "because a trial means questions, and questions might lead to the truth." "I believe you didn't kill my father," Josephine admitted. The words surprised her even as she spoke them, but she knew they were true. "But I don't know how to prove it." "There's a witness," Damian said quietly. "Your father told me he had arranged to meet someone the morning he was killed, someone who had information about the embezzlement. If we can find that person." "Who is it?" He didn't say, "but it must be someone else involved in the bank." Josephine thought for a moment. "The only other person with full access to the accounts is Walter Green, the head clerk. Where can I find him?" "You can't do anything from inside a jail cell," she pointed out. Damian's eyes met hers. "Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting?" "I need your help to find my father's killer," she said firmly, "and you need me to prove your innocence." After a moment's hesitation, he nodded. "Billy's a good kid, but he's not the most attentive guard. If you create a distraction, I might be able to get the keys." "I have a better idea," Josephine replied, reaching into her bag and withdrawing her father's revolver. "Billy's gone to check the back door. Take this." Damian's eyebrows rose as she passed him the gun through the bars. "You trust me with a loaded weapon? If I'm wrong about you, I'm already dead," she said bluntly. "But I don't think I am." He accepted the gun with a solemn nod. "I won't let you down, Miss Lawson." Within minutes, they had slipped out of the jailhouse through the rear exit. The night was cool and clear, the streets of San Elizario quiet except for the distant sounds from the saloon. "We need horses," Damian whispered as they kept to the shadows. "The livery stable is 2 blocks north," Josephine replied. "But where are we going?" "First to find Walter Green. Then, if necessary, we ride to El Paso. I have contacts there who can help us." As they approached the livery stable, a figure stepped out of an alleyway. Josephine stifled a gasp as Walter Green himself emerged, his round face pale in the moonlight. "Miss Lawson," he said uncertainly. "What are you?" His eyes widened as he recognized her companion. "O'Malley, you've escaped, Mr. Green," Damian said calmly, keeping the revolver hidden. "We need to talk to you about the morning Henry Lawson was killed." The clerk's nervous gaze darted between them. "I don't know anything about that." "My father was meeting someone that morning," Josephine pressed. "Was it you?" Green swallowed hard. "Not here, it's not safe." He glanced around fearfully. "They've been watching me since it happened." "Who has?" Damian asked. "Thornton's men." Green's voice was barely audible. "Follow me, I have a room above the general store." They trailed the nervous clerk through back alleys until they reached the store. Once inside his small quarters, Green lit a lamp with trembling hands. "Yes, I was supposed to meet your father that morning," he admitted. "I've been keeping track of the discrepancies in the bank's books for months. The mayor has been stealing from the bank, using false loans and manipulating records." "Did you see who shot my father?" Josephine asked. Green nodded miserably. "I was approaching from across the street when I saw Mayor Thornton talking with your father. They were arguing. Then Thornton drew a gun." He paused, his voice catching. "I was a coward. I hid behind the water trough. Thornton shot your father, and when O'Malley came running to help, Thornton shot at him too. Then he placed the blame on me," Damian finished grimly. "Yes, the sheriff arrived moments later. Thornton told him you and Mr. Lawson had argued and you shot him. Everyone believed him. He's the mayor, after all." Josephine felt sick. "Jacob Thornton has been like family to me. How could he do this?" The bank was about to be audited, Green explained. "Your father had discovered the extent of the theft and confronted Thornton privately first, giving him a chance to confess. Instead, Thornton decided to silence him." "We need you to testify," Damian said. "Your word against Thornton's might be enough." Green paled further. "They'll kill me before I reach the courthouse." "Then write it down," Josephine suggested. "Sign a sworn statement of what you saw." After some persuasion, Green agreed. As he wrote out his testimony, Damian pulled Josephine aside. "Once he finishes, we need to leave town immediately," he murmured. "Thornton will realize I've escaped by morning and he'll know you helped me." "Where will we go?" "My ranch is about 20 miles west. We can hide there while we decide how to expose Thornton safely." Josephine nodded, though her heart ached at the thought of missing her father's funeral. "I never imagined Jacob could do this. He's been part of my life since I was a child." "Money changes people," Damian said gently, "and fear of being caught makes them desperate." Green finished his statement, signing it with a flourish and handing it to Josephine. "This is everything I saw, plus what I know about the embezzlement. Be careful with it." They left through the back door, making their way to the livery stable. The stable boy was asleep in the hayloft, making it easy for them to saddle 2 horses. "I've never ridden astride," Josephine whispered, eyeing the saddle doubtfully. Damian smiled slightly the first time she'd seen him do so. "It's not proper, but it's faster. I'll help you." With his assistance, she mounted the horse, arranging her skirts as modestly as possible. As they rode quietly out of town, Josephine took one last look at San Elizario, the only home she'd ever known. Somewhere in those darkened streets was the man who had murdered her father, a man she had trusted completely. The night air was cool as they rode west, following a trail only Damian seemed to know. The vast Texas sky sparkled with stars, offering enough light to navigate by. They rode in silence for nearly an hour before Josephine broke it. "Tell me about yourself, Mr. O'Malley. If we're risking our lives together, I should know more about you." Damian glanced at her, his expression softening in the starlight. "There's not much to tell. I was born in Boston, joined the Pinkertons when I was 20, came west 3 years ago after." He hesitated. "After losing someone important to me." "I'm sorry," she said softly. He shrugged. "I bought land here to raise horses, been living quietly until your father contacted me." "How did he know about your detective background?" "We met in El Paso last year. I helped investigate a bank robbery there." He guided his horse around a rocky patch. "Your father was a good man, honest. Those are rare qualities." "Yes, they are," she agreed, thinking of Mayor Thornton's betrayal. "Did you find what you were looking for out here?" "Peace." Damian was silent for a moment. "Some days, the land has its own kind of honesty." They rode on through the night, stopping briefly to rest the horses at a small creek. The eastern sky was beginning to lighten when Damian pointed to a distant shape on the horizon. "My ranch," he said. "Nothing fancy, but it's home." As they drew closer, Josephine could make out a modest cabin with a barn and corral beside it. Several horses grazed in a fenced pasture. It was simple but well maintained, showing the care of its owner. They had just reached the front gate when Damian suddenly reined his horse to a stop, his hand moving to the revolver at his side. "Someone's been here," he said quietly, nodding toward fresh hoof prints in the dirt. "Stay behind me." They approached cautiously. The cabin door stood slightly ajar, though nothing else seemed disturbed. Damian dismounted, helping Josephine down before drawing the revolver. "Wait here," he instructed, but she shook her head. "I'm coming with you." Inside, the cabin was neat but Spartan, a table with chairs, a stone fireplace, a narrow bed in one corner. Nothing seemed out of place until Josephine noticed a piece of paper on the table, held down by a hunting knife stabbed through it. Damian crossed to it, his face hardening as he read the note. Without a word, he handed it to Josephine. "O'Malley, we know you're coming here. Bring the Lawson woman and any documents she has to the old Castillo ruins by noon tomorrow. Do this, and you both might live. Refuse and we'll hunt you down." "T. Thornton," Josephine whispered. "How did he know we'd come here? Someone must have followed us from town or—" Damian's expression darkened, green. "He could have told them after we left." "What do we do now?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Damian removed the knife from the table, tucking it into his belt. "We can't stay here. We need to keep moving. To where, if they found this place, they could find us anywhere. Not anywhere." He began gathering supplies, food, ammunition, a canteen. "My foreman, Eduardo, has a sister who lives in a small settlement near the river. It's mainly Mexican families who keep to themselves. We should be safe there for a while." As Damian packed, Josephine noticed a framed photograph on a shelf, a younger Damian with a pretty dark-haired woman. The person he had lost, perhaps? She didn't ask. Within minutes, they were back on their horses, riding southwest away from the ranch. The sun was climbing higher, promising a hot day ahead. Josephine's body ached from the unaccustomed riding, but she kept pace with Damian without complaint. "Tell me more about Mayor Thornton," Damian said as they rode. "How long has he been mayor?" "Almost 15 years. He helped build San Elizario into what it is today." Josephine frowned. "He and my father founded the bank together, though Jacob later sold his interest to focus on politics." "Any family?" "A wife, Victoria, no children." She hesitated. "My mother died when I was 12. Jacob and Victoria practically helped raise me after that." Damian glanced at her. "That makes his betrayal even worse." "Yes." Her throat tightened. "I can't understand it." "The Jacob I knew wouldn't murder someone over money." "People are complicated," Damian said. "They show different faces to different people." By midday, the heat had become oppressive. They stopped in the shade of a rocky outcropping, sharing water and jerky from Damian's supplies. "How much further?" Josephine asked, wiping sweat from her brow. "Another couple of hours. We should reach there by—" The crack of a rifle shot interrupted him, the bullet striking rock inches from where they sat. Damian immediately pulled Josephine down behind larger boulders. "Stay down," he commanded, drawing his revolver. Another shot rang out, chipping stone above their heads. "They found us," Josephine whispered, fear gripping her. "At least 2 of them, judging by the shots." Damian peered carefully around the boulder. "They're on that ridge to the north." Josephine followed his gaze to see 2 riders silhouetted against the sky. She recognized one immediately by his distinctive hat. "That's Deputy Miller," she said. "I'd know that hat anywhere." "Can you ride?" Damian asked, eyes scanning the terrain. "Yes." "When I start firing, run for the horses. Head southwest, following that dry creek bed. I'll be right behind you." Before she could protest, Damian stood partially and fired 3 quick shots toward the ridge. The deputies ducked for cover, giving Josephine the chance to sprint to the horses. Her heart pounded as she mounted, looking back anxiously for Damian. He fired twice more before running to his own horse, swinging up with practiced ease. "Go!" he shouted, and they galloped away as more shots kicked up dust around them. They rode hard for nearly an hour, following the winding creek bed until they were certain they'd lost their pursuers. Finally, they slowed their exhausted horses to a walk. "You're hurt," Josephine said suddenly. Noticing blood on Damian's left arm, he glanced down with mild surprise. "Just a graze. I'll tend to it when we reach Eduardo's sister's place. We can't keep running forever, she said. Sooner or later they'll catch us or we'll run out of places to hide. We don't need forever, Damian replied. Just long enough to get Green's testimony to someone who can use it. Who? The sheriff is clearly working with Thornton. The federal marshal in El Paso. He's a fair man from what I've heard. With Green's testimony and your father's documents, he might listen. As the afternoon wore on, the landscape gradually changed, becoming more vegetated as they neared the Rio Grande. Eventually, they crested a small hill to see a cluster of adobe buildings nestled beside the river. That's it, Damian said. Sausalito, small but the people are good. They rode into the settlement as the sun began to set. Children playing in the dusty streets stopped to stare at the strangers, while women paused in their work to watch cautiously. An older woman emerged from one of the larger buildings, her face breaking into a smile when she recognized Damian. Senor O'Malley, she called. Eduardo told us to expect you. Doña Isabella, Damian greeted her, dismounting and helping Josephine down. Thank you for your hospitality. This is Miss Josephine Lawson. The woman nodded respectfully to Josephine before gesturing toward Damian's blood-stained sleeve. You are hurt. Come inside, both of you. Inside the adobe home, they were led to a small but clean room at the back of the house. Doña Isabella brought water, food, and clean bandages, clucking disapprovingly at Damian's wound as she helped Josephine clean and bind it. Left alone to rest, Josephine sank onto the narrow cot, the exhaustion of the past days finally catching up with her. Across the room, Damian sat on a wooden chair examining the documents she had taken from her father's study. These prove everything Green said, he commented, looking up at her. Your father was thorough. He always was, she said softly, memories washing over her. Precise in everything he did. She closed her eyes briefly. Today was his funeral. I should have been there. I'm sorry, Damian said, genuine regret in his voice. It doesn't matter. He's gone, and a funeral won't change that. She opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. What matters now is justice, Damian nodded. We'll ride for El Paso tomorrow. It's about 30 miles. With luck, we can reach the marshal by nightfall. And if Thornton's men find us before that, they won't, he said with more confidence than she felt. Get some rest, Miss Lawson. Tomorrow will be another long day. Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded Josephine. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw her father lying in the street or Mayor Thornton's friendly face transformed by betrayal. Eventually, she rose and stepped outside into the cool night air. Damian was already there, sitting on a bench outside the door, staring at the stars. You should be resting, he said without turning, so should you. She sat beside him, maintaining a proper distance. Your arm needs time to heal. I've had worse. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the sounds of the river and night insects creating a peaceful backdrop. May I ask you something? Josephine finally said. Of course. The photograph in your cabin, was she someone special to you? Damian was quiet for so long that she thought he wouldn't answer. When he did, his voice was low. My wife, Caroline, she died of fever 3 years ago. That's why I left the East. I'm sorry, she said softly. I know what it's like to lose someone you love, he nodded. It changes you. Yes. She looked up at the vast expanse of stars. But we go on somehow. We do. He turned to look at her, his expression softening in the moonlight. You're stronger than you realize, Miss Lawson. Josephine, she corrected him. After everything we've been through, I think formalities seem rather pointless. A small smile touched his lips. Josephine, then, and I'm Damian. In that moment, something shifted between them, a recognition of the bond that had formed through danger and shared purpose. They were no longer just reluctant allies, but something more. The moment was broken by the sound of approaching horses. Damian was immediately on his feet, hand on his revolver. Inside, quickly, he whispered. They retreated into the house, Damian positioning himself at the window. 3 riders entered the settlement, stopping in what passed for the main street. Even in the dim light, Josephine could recognize Sheriff Wilson's imposing figure. They found us, she breathed. Stay here, Damian instructed, moving toward the door. What are you doing? She hissed. Creating a diversion. If they're looking for both of us, they'll follow me. No, she caught his arm. We stay together. Before he could argue, Doña Isabella appeared from the back of the house. Come, she said urgently. There is another way out. She led them to a root cellar and then through a narrow tunnel that emerged on the riverbank, 50 yards from the settlement. 2 saddled horses were waiting, held by a young boy who nodded solemnly at Damian. Eduardo's son, Damian explained as they mounted. Tell your father thank you, he said to the boy in Spanish. They rode parallel to the river for several miles before turning east toward El Paso. The night was clear, the quarter moon providing just enough light to navigate by. How did they find us so quickly? Josephine wondered as they rode. Someone in Sausalito must have sent word to San Elizario when Eduardo asked about sheltering us, Damian replied grimly. Even small communities have those willing to sell information. If they're this determined, what chance do we have of reaching the marshal? A better one than you might think. They don't know we're headed to El Paso yet, and we have a head start. They rode through the night, stopping only briefly to rest the horses. By dawn, they had covered considerable distance, the landscape gradually becoming more rugged as they approached the mountains surrounding El Paso. As the sun rose fully, they stopped beside a small spring to refill their canteens and allow the horses to drink. Josephine splashed cool water on her face, trying to wash away the exhaustion. Her body ached from 2 days of hard riding, her dress was torn and dirty, and her hair had come loose from its pins. You should eat something, Damian said, offering her a strip of jerky from his saddlebag. She accepted it gratefully, suddenly aware of her hunger. How much further to El Paso? About 15 miles. We should reach there by early afternoon. As they prepared to continue, Josephine noticed Damian wince as he tightened his saddle. Your arm is worse, she observed. It's fine, he dismissed, but she insisted on checking the bandage. The wound was red and swollen, signs of infection beginning to set in. This needs proper treatment, she said worriedly. We should find a doctor in El Paso before going to the marshal. The marshal first, Damian insisted. Your safety is more important than my arm. His concern touched her, but she didn't argue. They continued their journey, the terrain becoming increasingly difficult as they followed a narrow mountain trail. Damian seemed to know the way instinctively, leading them through passes and across dry stream beds. By midday, they had reached a high ridge that offered a view of El Paso in the distance, the town sprawling along the Rio Grande with Mexico visible on the opposite bank. We made it, Josephine said with relief. Not quite yet, Damian cautioned. The most dangerous part is still ahead. Thornton may have telegraphed ahead to watch for us. They approached the town cautiously, taking a circuitous route that brought them in from the south rather than the east. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly as they rode through the outskirts, past adobe homes and small farms. El Paso was considerably larger than San Elizario, with proper streets and substantial buildings alongside the adobe structures. People of various backgrounds, Mexican, Anglo, and Native American, moved through the dusty thoroughfares. The marshal's office should be near the center of town, Damian said as they rode down a side street, avoiding the main road. They had just turned onto a wider street when Josephine spotted a familiar figure outside a saloon. Deputy Miller, talking to 2 rough-looking men. Damian, she whispered urgently. Miller is here. He followed her gaze, his expression hardening. They must have ridden straight through. Duck down and keep riding. Don't look at them. They passed without being noticed, but Josephine's heart raced. If Miller is here, others might be too. The marshal's office is just ahead. Damian pointed to a building flying the American flag. Once we're inside, a shout from behind interrupted him. O'Malley, stop right there. They turned to see Sheriff Wilson himself, revolver drawn, standing in the middle of the street, pedestrians scattered, sensing trouble. Get to the marshal, Damian told Josephine. I'll handle Wilson. "You're in no condition, go," he insisted, turning his horse to face the sheriff. Josephine hesitated only a moment before spurring her horse toward the marshal's office. Behind her, she heard Wilson shouting, "That man is wanted for murder, stop him." She didn't look back, focusing only on reaching the building ahead. As she neared it, two men emerged, one wearing a marshal's badge, the other in an expensive suit she recognized with horror, Mayor Jacob Thornton. She reined her horse to a stop, her mind racing. If Thornton was already with the marshal, they had lost their chance. The mayor's eyes widened in surprise when he saw her, quickly masked by a look of concern. "Josephine, thank God you're safe," he called, stepping toward her. "We've been so worried." The marshal, a stern-faced man with a silver mustache, regarded her with suspicion. "This the Lawson girl?" "Yes," Thornton replied. "She was kidnapped by her father's murderer. O'Malley must be nearby." Josephine made a split-second decision. Reaching into her saddlebag, she withdrew the envelope containing Green's testimony and her father's documents. "Marshal," she said clearly, "I have evidence that Mayor Thornton murdered my father and framed Damian O'Malley for the crime." Thornton's face darkened. "She's confused, Marshal. Traumatized by her father's death and manipulated by O'Malley." The marshal looked between them, his expression unreadable. "That's a serious accusation, miss. Read the documents," she insisted, holding out the envelope. "Walter Green witnessed the murder. He signed a sworn statement." A commotion from down the street drew their attention. Damian was riding toward them, pursued by Sheriff Wilson and Deputy Miller. Blood had soaked through the bandage on his arm, but his face showed grim determination. As he approached, Thornton drew a concealed derringer from his coat. "Marshal, arrest that man. He's armed and dangerous." The marshal's hand moved to his own weapon, but Josephine quickly dismounted and stepped between them, still holding out the envelope. "Please," she implored, "just read this first. If I'm wrong, you lose nothing. If I'm right, you prevent an innocent man from hanging." Something in her desperate sincerity must have reached the marshal. He took the envelope, his eyes never leaving Damian as he approached and dismounted, hands carefully visible. "Keep your hands where I can see them, O'Malley," the marshal ordered, passing the envelope to a deputy. "Check these documents." Thornton's composure began to crack. "This is absurd. You can't possibly believe the word of a murderer and a grief-stricken woman over that of a respected mayor and sheriff." "I believe evidence, Mayor Thornton," the marshal replied evenly, "and I find it interesting that you're so eager to prevent me from examining it." As the deputy began reading Green's statement aloud, Thornton's face drained of color. He glanced frantically around, like a cornered animal seeking escape. When the deputy reached the part describing Thornton shooting Henry Lawson, the mayor suddenly lunged toward Josephine, grabbing her and pressing his derringer to her temple. "Drop your weapons," he commanded, his voice shaking with desperation, "or I'll kill her too." The street froze in tableau, the marshal and his deputies with hands hovering over their revolvers, Sheriff Wilson looking suddenly uncertain, and Damian standing tensely a few yards away, his blue eyes locked on Josephine's. "Let her go, Thornton," Damian said calmly. "It's over." "Nothing's over," Thornton snarled. "I built San Elizario. Everything I took from the bank went back into the town. Henry didn't understand that." "So you killed him for it?" Josephine asked, her voice remarkably steady despite the cold metal pressed against her head. "I didn't want to," Thornton's voice cracked slightly. "He was going to expose me, ruin everything I'd built. I tried to reason with him, but he wouldn't listen." "Like my father would say," Josephine replied, "there's no reasoning with dishonesty." In that moment of Thornton's distraction, she drove her elbow hard into his stomach. As he doubled over, Damian lunged forward, tackling him to the ground. The derringer discharged harmlessly into the air as Marshall's deputies swarmed around them. Within moments, Thornton was disarmed and restrained, his face a mask of defeated rage. Sheriff Wilson, seeing the evidence mounting against his co-conspirator, quietly surrendered his weapon. "Marshal," Wilson said wearily, I never knew Thornton killed Henry. I believed O'Malley was guilty. We'll sort that out later, the marshal replied coldly before turning to Damian. You need a doctor for that arm, son. As the deputies led Thornton and Wilson away, Josephine rushed to Damian's side. He was pale from blood loss but managed a weak smile. Are you all right? He asked, concern evident despite his own condition. I'm fine, she assured him, supporting him as he swayed slightly. But you need medical attention immediately. The marshal arranged for a doctor to treat Damian's wound, which had indeed become infected. While Josephine waited outside the doctor's office, the marshal joined her, hat in hand. Miss Lawson, I owe you an apology. If you hadn't been so persistent, a grave injustice might have occurred. He cleared his throat uncomfortably. Your father's murderer will face trial along with anyone who helped cover up his crime. Thank you, Marshal, she said sincerely. All I wanted was the truth. And the cowboy, O'Malley, what are your plans now? The question caught her off guard. I haven't thought that far ahead. The marshal nodded, understanding in his eyes. Well, when you do, know that your father would be proud of your courage. After the marshal left, Josephine sat alone with her thoughts. In just a few days, her entire world had been upended. Her father was gone, her hometown harbored painful memories, and the man she had trusted like family had betrayed her completely. Yet amid all the loss, something unexpected had emerged, a connection to Damian O'Malley that had grown from suspicion to trust, and perhaps to something more. The doctor emerged, wiping his hands on a towel. He'll be fine. The infection wasn't too deep, but he'll need rest. He's asking for you. Inside the small examination room, Damian sat on the edge of the bed, his arm freshly bandaged. He looked up as she entered, his face lighting with a smile that transformed his usually serious features. The marshal tells me Thornton has confessed everything, he said. Yes, it seems he couldn't bear the thought of a trial exposing all his crimes. She moved closer, suddenly unsure what to say. What will you do now? Head back to my ranch, I suppose. Those horses won't train themselves. He hesitated. And you, Josephine looked down at her hands. I don't know. San Elizario holds too many painful memories now. You could. He started, then paused. That is, my ranch has plenty of room until you decide. She looked up, meeting his gaze. Are you offering me a job, Mr. O'Malley? A smile tugged at his lips. I thought we were past formalities, Josephine. We are. She found herself smiling in return. And I accept your offer, Damian, at least for now. 3 days later, they rode out of El Paso, heading west toward Damian's ranch. The marshal had cleared Damian's name completely, and Walter Green had been brought to El Paso to testify at Thornton's upcoming trial. Justice would be served, though it couldn't bring back her father. The journey was easier this time without pursuers at their heels. They took their time, stopping to rest frequently for Damian's sake as his arm healed. During those quiet evenings by the campfire, they talked, sharing stories of their pasts and thoughts about the future. Josephine learned that Damian had grown up in a Boston orphanage before making his own way in the world. His time with the Pinkertons had shown him both the best and worst of humanity, leaving him with a strong sense of justice that matched her own. When he spoke of his late wife, it was with gentle fondness rather than raw grief, a wound healed but never forgotten. In turn, she told him about growing up as the banker's daughter in San Elizario, her mother's early death, and her father's dedication to raising her alone. She spoke of her love of books and her secret desire to see more of the world beyond West Texas. On the evening of the 4th day, they reached Damian's ranch. It looked different now, not a hideout, but a potential home. The cabin was simple but welcoming, the land around it open and promising. It needs a woman's touch, Damian admitted as they settled in. Caroline had plans to make it more homelike before she fell ill. Perhaps I could help with that, Josephine offered, surprising herself with how much she wanted to. The days turned to weeks as summer progressed. Josephine wrote to Clara Wilson in San Elizario, arranging for her remaining possessions to be sent to the ranch. She learned about caring for horses, discovered she had a talent for keeping the ranch's accounts, and slowly transformed the cabin into a proper home. Damian taught her to ride astride without embarrassment, to shoot with accuracy, and to appreciate the wild beauty of the land. In the evenings, she read aloud from books they purchased on trips to El Paso, introducing him to Dickens and Austen. They maintained propriety. Josephine slept in the small room Damian had added for guests, while he took the main room of the cabin. Yet with each passing day, the connection between them deepened. She caught him watching her with a warmth that made her heart flutter, while she found herself seeking reasons to be near him. In late August, word came from El Paso that Jacob Thornton had been convicted of murder and sentenced to hang. Sheriff Wilson had received a lesser sentence for his role in the cover-up. The news brought Josephine a complicated mix of emotions: closure but no joy. That evening, she sat on the porch steps, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains in gold and crimson. Damian joined her, offering a cup of coffee. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. "Yes," she said after a moment. "It's finally over." "Does it help?" She considered the question. "Not as much as I thought it would. Justice doesn't fill the emptiness." "No," he agreed. "It just prevents the wound from festering." They sat in comfortable silence as darkness gradually claimed the landscape. Stars appeared, brilliant in the clear desert sky. "I received a letter from the bank in San Elizario today," Josephine said eventually. "They've appointed a new manager, but my father's ownership share comes to me. They want me to return and take his place on the board." Damian stiffened slightly beside her. "Will you go?" She turned to face him. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether I have a reason to stay." His eyes searched hers in the fading light. "I think you know that you do, Josephine." "Do I?" she asked softly. "I need to hear it, Damian." He set his coffee cup down and took her hands in his. "When I lost Caroline, I thought that part of my life was over. I came out here to be alone with my grief and my horses." His voice grew more certain. "Then you burst into my jail cell, pointing accusations and later a gun at me, and somehow everything changed." She laughed softly. "Not the most conventional beginning." "No," he agreed with a smile. "But I wouldn't change it. These past 2 months, watching you make this place into a home, seeing your strength and your kindness. I've fallen in love with you, Josephine. I want you to stay, not as my guest or my housekeeper, but as my wife if you'll have me." Tears welled in her eyes, but they were tears of happiness. "When I first met you, I thought you were my father's murderer." "Not the most promising start to a courtship," he admitted. "No," she smiled through her tears. "But I know now what my father saw in you: your honor, your determination to see justice done. I've fallen in love with those qualities too, and with the man who possesses them." He reached up to brush a tear from her cheek. "Is that a yes?" "Yes," she whispered. "I'll stay. I'll be your wife." Damian leaned forward, hesitating just a moment before his lips met hers in a gentle kiss that deepened as she responded. When they finally parted, both were smiling. "Your father would approve, I think," Damian said. "He would," she agreed. "He valued honesty and courage above all else. He would have been proud to call you son." They were married in October of 1875 in a small ceremony at their ranch, with the marshal from El Paso serving as witness. Clara Wilson traveled from San Elizario to stand with Josephine, while Eduardo and his family represented Damian's side. Life settled into a rhythm of work and companionship. The ranch prospered under their joint care, with Damian's skill with horses complemented by Josephine's head for business. They expanded operations, breeding and training horses that became sought after throughout the territory. Josephine maintained her connection to the San Elizario Bank, traveling there quarterly for board meetings, but always returning eagerly to the ranch and to Damian. The town held fewer painful memories as time passed, allowing her to reclaim the good parts of her childhood there. In the spring of 1877, their first child was born, a son they named Henry, after Josephine's father. 2 years later, they welcomed a daughter, Sarah. The cabin expanded along with their family, adding rooms and comforts while maintaining its welcoming character. Damian occasionally assisted the marshal in El Paso on difficult cases, putting his Pinkerton training to use, but he always returned to the ranch and the family that had become his center. Josephine wrote articles for newspapers in El Paso, and eventually a book about frontier banking that gained attention in the East. On the 5th anniversary of their marriage, they sat together on the porch of their now substantial home, watching their children play with Eduardo's younger sons in the yard. "You ever regret it?" Damian asked, his arm around her shoulders. "Staying here instead of returning to town life?" Josephine looked around at the home they had built together, the thriving ranch, their beautiful children, the life they had created from tragedy's aftermath. "Never," she said with absolute certainty. "This is where I was meant to be, even though our beginning was marked by death and betrayal." He pressed. She turned to face him, taking in the face she had come to know as well as her own, the lines around his eyes that deepened when he smiled, the strength and tenderness in his expression. "Perhaps especially because of that," she replied. "We found each other in the darkest moment and built something beautiful from it. There's a special kind of love in that." Damian kissed her softly. "A love born of truth." "Yes," she agreed, resting her head against his shoulder as they watched the sunset paint the land in gold. "A love born of truth." And as the stars began to appear in the vast Texas sky, Josephine reflected that sometimes the hardest journeys lead to the most perfect destinations. From the ashes of betrayal and grief, she and Damian had forged a bond stronger than the steel of his revolver, a love built on trust, honesty, and the courage to seek truth no matter the cost. It wasn't the life she had imagined as a banker's daughter in San Elizario, but it was infinitely more fulfilling, a life of purpose, passion, and the profound joy of being truly known and loved. In the end, that was the greatest justice her father could have wished for her.